Planet of Lana is a cinematic puzzle adventure framed by an epic sci-fi saga that stretches across centuries and galaxies. Published by Thunderful Publishing and developed by Wishfully, this game features a young woman and her loyal friend who embark on a rescue mission through a colorful world full of cold machines and unfamiliar creatures. Look, I just finished playing Planet of Lana, and I've got some thoughts about it. Let's talk about this game. Look, as I'm talking about the game, I just want to warn you, I'm going to talk about spoilers. I've played the whole game. If you haven't played the game yet, I'd encourage you to go do it. It only takes about 4 or 5 hours to beat in its entirety. I've got a full 2-part playthrough of this entire game on the channel. Click that card up there in the corner right now if you want to see the whole thing played. Let's start by talking about the gameplay. The game features mostly puzzles as you move in this side-scrolling adventure. The puzzles were interesting. They weren't super complicated, they weren't very challenging, but they did make you think a little bit. I liked some of the basic puzzle elements, like put this box here and it weighs down this switch, stuff that you would see in games like this, but I also liked the timing. We had various timing sequences that you had to play through with one of the evil spidery robots. You had to memorize which pattern, what the pattern was that robot was moving around the stage, and get past it either using wit, stealth, or timing. I did like those features. Because it was really focused on being a cinematic adventure, it did have these longer running to the right sequences, and I would have rather almost, if they were going to include those, that they just take over the controls for me at that point. Pressing right just to like enjoy the cinematic venture and the aesthetic, I don't really like that in a game. If we're gonna have sort of a I'm watching a movie and playing a game at the same time type of game, just take over at certain moments. I don't mind that. In cinematic games like this, I really like when they include the button mashing sequences, timed button presses that line up with something where you're not really controlling the character, but you're paying attention, and it gives you some sort of control over what's happening. I do like those kind of sequences. They only had a few in this game, though. I did think that there was more opportunity for them to bring more of that into the game, to continue to tell the story, build the world out even more than it already did, and just keep me engaged through the sequences where we were just getting from one stage to another. I think that was a missed opportunity, but the sequences that they did include were some of my favorite in the game, and so I really just wish there had been more of that in this. The companion, the cat, Mui, the controls there, they were intuitive, and I really did enjoy playing alongside the companion. I like that mechanic, but again, I just kind of wish there was more to it. You know, there were only a few simple, repeated options that Mui was going to help you with. You could jump up to where I couldn't get to and throw me down a rope. You could jump up to where I couldn't get to and press a button. I'll fly you up to this area of the level where I can't get to, and you press a button or throw me down a rope that I can't reach, and, you know, I'll continue progressing along that way. I did like when the cat needed to distract a robot for me. I thought that could have been utilized a little bit more. Really, there was only one mechanic where the distraction piece of the companion came into play, and it was Mui standing over a hole, and you'd say, all right, go down in the hole and go to another part of the stage through like a little dig mechanic, or then come back and catch up with me. Wish there had been a little bit more of that. Thought that, you know, maybe some agility with the cat, maybe I can count on the cat to at least dodge one attack, something like that would have let me use it as a distraction a little bit more so that I could progress and then the cat could catch up. The only other real use for Mui was this weird kind of telekinesis magic ability that you gain about halfway through the game, where the cat could like lock eyes with certain things and then pull or push. Basically, it was the cat's version of pull or push that you would use for puzzles to, you know, move lights so that other areas of the stages would come alive as a platform or something if it wasn't being directly lit. Things like that. That was really the only other use for the companion, but again, it was still just a very simple, straightforward game overall, and so I thought that the companion mechanics were well used and necessary to the overall story, and I like how it tied into the narrative as well. There were 2 gameplay mechanic puzzles areas that I really liked and I wanted to highlight. There was an area where I needed to knock over some boxes by controlling a drone. That was a frequent mechanic, controlling drones in there. But there was one spot where I needed to kick over some boxes to make what I needed to happen. And I wish that we had utilized a little bit more of the physics. There weren't a lot of physics puzzles in this. There was that, and there was like, you need to jump down, you need to get up high enough so you can jump from a far enough height to kick down through a platform that looks very like broken and you can get to the next section that way. I just wish the physics, they were present. Wish we had used more of that. There was also one section where fans were kicking on and off, and it was wind blowing, and you had to get through it in a different way than you had really engaged yet. I thought that that could have been a cool way to get another physics puzzle into the game. Let's just repeat that same sort of sequence with a different set of pipes and fans. It was disappointing that I only saw that once, because during that section I was like, wow, I really like this physics-based approach to solving the puzzles and getting to the next area. Real quick before I talk about my favorite thing in the game, if you would hit that subscribe button for me. It's really simple, straight up, and free for you, and it helps me so much. I can't even tell you how much it helps. Let's talk about my favorite thing in Planet of Lana. The best part to me of the game was the graphics and the music. The aesthetic of this game was awesome. The hand-painted style was fantastic. I love how deep the levels felt going backward into the distance. It is a completely side-scrolling game, but there was so much happening in the backgrounds, and even the backgrounds of the backgrounds, if you know what I'm saying. The world felt super deep. The whole planet felt really fleshed out, and I love how alive everything felt. Even though it was hand painted in the style, it all was moving and beautiful, and it was just a really nice, aesthetically pleasing game to play. The music and the sound design on top of that was top notch. They were fantastic at making you feel how they wanted you to feel at certain points of the game. I thought that the robots and the attacking army that came and harvested all of the villagers and took them somewhere else, all the noises and all of the sound design surrounding those creatures was absolutely wonderful. It sounded really brutalistic compared to the underworld or the main world that Lana lived in before they arrived. And so I thought they did a really fantastic job of sound design on these things, not only the creatures, but the music as well. Speaking of music, it played a huge role in the narrative of this story. There were multiple sequences where I needed to achieve a certain order of notes to solve the puzzle and move to the next section. And I liked how the order of notes for like the human world was different than the order of notes for the robot world, but they were very similar. They were like almost offshoots of each other. I loved that narratively, and I loved the puzzles where you had to figure out music to achieve a certain goal. I would have wanted to see more of that, honestly. That was some of my favorite parts of the entire game. In contrast to that, there were two sections of the video game that were basically extended music videos, and I didn't really like it at all. It kind of took me out of the game. The music that was chosen for those music videos was fine, but it was a person singing, and that was just really out of place with the entire game. That was just based on these sequences of notes. And so I thought that I wasn't really into those. They sort of drew me out of the game, and I would have preferred that those weren't in there. Or maybe we just had one at the end that sort of led into the credits. I've seen that in games before, and I didn't mind it. But I just really wasn't a fan of that, and I thought that they should have stuck to the narrative-based music that they had really achieved and done a fantastic job of. Talking about the story was very simple. It was very straightforward. Aliens arrive on this world, Lana's sister is taken, and Lana wants to get her sister back. She meets up with a companion halfway through, and they sort of achieve the goal of going and just further out into the woods trying to find her sister, and eventually they find her. Honestly, I thought it was a little too straightforward. I would have preferred some sort of twist. It really felt to me when we got to the alien ship and you saw that all the humans were being kept and being fed this like goo that they were creating from the other organic life forms on the planet. I thought that was pretty crazy, but it felt like at that moment it was about to twist. I really was excited for a narrative twist in this story because it was so simple. There wasn't anything wrong with it being simple, but I thought a twist could have been cool. You know, what if the robots were actually saving everyone and Lana sort of ruined that, but was able to achieve everybody getting together? I don't know, that's sort of a negative outcome for the entire story, and this was all really focused on like family and companionship and a positive ending overall. But I really thought that some twist was coming, and I feel like I would have preferred if we had gotten some sort of twist. There was an understory to the entire narrative that I really wasn't catching on to entirely, and at the end I think it paid off. There was a huge sequence at the end, the final boss, so to speak, in this game, and the cat that is your companion, Mui, the entire game, ends up using like a hyper beam attack by sucking up a bunch of energy, and we had some basis for energy being used by the cat after we gained a certain power, but I just thought that the hyper beam sequence was out of nowhere, and I really didn't understand exactly what was going on. Visually and sound wise, it was awesome. It was such a cool final moment for the game, but I just narratively wasn't exactly sure where it fit. I knew we were sort of destroying the AI, or the core, so to speak, of the aliens that had invaded the robot race that had come to the planet, but I just narratively, I wasn't sure past that entirely what the hell was going on. The game's performance was fine. It looked really beautiful. Everything was fluid and moved pretty well. There weren't really any glitches. There was one weird ragdoll moment where Lana fell a far distance and I ended up dying and having to go back to the beginning of that puzzle, and the ragdoll physics kind of freaked out, but overall there weren't any issues like that. I would say that the game really doesn't have a ton of replay value. I played it through once. The puzzles weren't that challenging. I figured them out. I didn't get all of the secret areas, but I don't really feel that inclined to go back and do that. The few that I found were fine, but it just at that point felt like more exploration instead of enjoying the cinematic story, which I thought was the point of the video game. The only note I really had about the performance was there were a couple of moments where I was trying to jump up and grab the rope specifically. That was a way of getting to the next stage in a couple of different puzzles. And jumping up and grabbing onto the rope was always sort of I needed to jump 2 or 3 times, it seemed, to connect with the rope. I don't know what went on with the controls there, because everything else, it felt really fluid, but the rope itself, I just felt like it was worth mentioning. It was a weird place of the controls for me. Overall, I'm going to call this game a recommend. It's only about 4 or 5 hours long. It's a great game just to relax and play through on a rainy afternoon. Maybe your significant other, your friend, or your kid want to watch a cool game get played. Y'all can talk about what the story means together and interpret it how you will. And there's a cute little cat that's helping you save the planet, so what's not to like about that? If you enjoyed this review or it gave you any value at all, clicking that subscribe button really means so much to me. It helps out my efforts over here so much. If you want to hang out when I'm live, every Tuesday night, I'm gaming live here on the channel. Clicking that subscribe button will let you know when I go live. You can come hang out with me in the community and we can play some games together. Other than that, I'm Joelbozo. I'll catch you in the next one.